So it was.
Huh?
No, okay.
I heard I heard something was muted.
Okay. Anybody here from the public one more time? No, thank you. No public comment. We'll move on. Consent agenda. We get a approval of the consent agenda. Motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move the consent agenda.
If you have second.
Second.
Dr. Astor seconds. Consent agenda. Any objections? Any conversation? No. Consent agenda. Is passed. Old business, hospital capacity. We'll start with Karen.
Mr. Chair, so my report, we have no COVID in-house currently. For supply issues that I've been made aware of this week. We have patient data as far as CCUs 58, med surge 256, MHU 64, OB 51. Excuse me, the nurseries 38. The emergency department saw 908 patients last month, which is pretty high volume for this time of year. We have 7 waiting for placement. Currently 3 for subacute rehab, 3 for assisted living, and 1 for long-term care. And I'll let Deb give you the stats for Wildflower Court when she gets her report.
Thank you very much, Karen. So I have asked Joe, our CEO, to move Wildflower Court capacity report up to this area right after. Yeah, so yeah, welcome.
Hi, yeah, and I wanted to say hi to everyone. And I think I have met everyone, and I appreciate your confidence vote for me for this new position. It's very exciting. We've hit the ground running, and I'm just really happy to be over there now. So yeah. So this is my 3rd week, so I don't have a ton to share, but I will share some of the stats. I do have that information. As of today, we have 51 residents on the census. And our average daily census for November was 52. we've been hanging out right around there, occupancy rate at 83%. Our long-term residents to our rehab patients, about 42 to about 10, and that goes up and down, you know, as the weeks kind of move along. So it's between 8 to 10 for the rehab patients.
Thank you. So I know this might not be the part, but I was at Wildflower Court yesterday. It was my wife's Aunt Bee 100th birthday at Wildflower Court, and that facility is very, very nice. And Deb was there at her party, and the staff did a great job, and I really want to make sure that we thank the staff for all you guys do there, and everybody's very happy you're there as our new administrator. So thank you, Deb. With that, we'll move on to our committee restructuring. I'll turn this over to our vice president.
Do we have an action item?
Yeah, there is.
So we've talked about this a couple of times. We talked about it in the planning committee. We talked about it at the last board meeting. So today we have the goal in our conversations was to streamline and the committee structure and to align functions of the committees. So we have moved from 5 committees to 4 committees. At this, we're proposing to move from 5 to 4, changing, as you probably read in the action item, the compliance committee, the compliance portion of the compliance and audit committee goes to along with quality. So it's now quality and compliance. And the audit portion of compliance and audit is now rolled into finance. It's finance and audit committee, which is a more traditional alignment. So we're bringing this forward to folks today. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but I'll entertain questions.
Do we have any questions on this? So there is a motion in the packet, and I know that we've been talking about this now for several months, and I know Deb has worked hard with Joe and even with Ian before Ian left on getting these aligned too. And I also think that we talked with Chad about this as well too, correct, on making sure that we were doing this properly and make sure that our committee structures are really in great order. So now is a great time to ask any questions. If not, we'll go ahead and take a motion.
Well, I don't have a question, but this is a public meeting.
Yes.
I don't want to give the impression we're all just asleep or something. We've talked about this for a long time, and this makes a lot of sense to me. I don't have anything new to add, but I'm very much in favor of this. This has been well thought out over a long period.
Thank you, Helen. Anybody else have any comments? Please.
I know that one of the things that we're gonna do in governance is review the bylaws, but I believe we probably will need to make a change in the bylaws also with the names of the committees as well. Right.
So that was a yes.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. All right, anybody want to make a motion?
I move the board of directors of Bartlett Regional Hospital approve the revised committee structure as presented to the board.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded.
Can you, just before, can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I just said, we had talked earlier about having all committees have a regular schedule. You've got that queued up,
Yes,
that's all.
Anita and I have been talking about it, and we have I think a proposed aids for the different meetings that we'll bring back at the next board meeting.
Great, thank you.
All right, any more comments or questions? Nope, with that, motion's passed. Next, we're gonna go on to our tentative agreement with the union. And so with that, it also is an action item on this too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are proposing, we're requesting that the board approve the tentative contract between Bartlett Regional Hospital and ILWU. As you can see in the memo, the ILWU is currently in their voting process. They will be counting their votes on Saturday, so the ask is that we go ahead and affirm the contract on our side, provided we get an affirmation on their side, a yes vote. Then we would be able to get on the docket for the January 6th city assembly meeting to have the contract officially ratified. So a couple of the highlights in terms of the wages, we bargained a 2% increase, which we've already paid them. And then a 5.5, a 0.5% retro payment for this year, a 3% increase for FY26, and a 5.5% increase for FY27. As you can see in the summary details, there's quite a bit of information there. I don't want to go through each line item. That's on the pages 29 and 30. So if you have any questions about any of the specific changes, I'm happy to answer. And there is a proposed motion in the memo.
Thank you, Chad. Got the motion up on the board here. You and your group worked really hard, Gail and Chad, and to get this across the finish line too. Again, this is something that the board of directors on our last meeting was able to give them direction and make sure that they were able to get to this path. So I'm very happy to see that. So we'll get the motion made and then we'll ask for discussion. Lisa, you want to make the motion? You can see it pretty good.
Sure. I move the Board of Directors of Bartlett Regional Hospital approve the tentative agreement between the ILWU and BRH and forward to the CBJ Assembly for ratification.
I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa and Deb. Now it's time for questions and comments. Next.
So I just want to also say that we really appreciate you've been dialed in on this, obviously, for a year now.
I'm ready for it to be done.
Did you take it on the first day that you came to work here?
It was pretty close, yeah.
So if we follow the same kind of path that we did on this last one, then we're 2 years or less before we start the next round, right?
Correct.
One of the questions I had is 3 years what it needs to be, or is it possible to do something longer, for next time around? I mean, does it have to be 3 years? Could you tack on another year or two on the close of this one? If you could come to an agreement, I just wonder what the options are rather than, going through this. And
I can tell you that the union president and I have had several just one-to-one conversations. I expect the next go around of the contract to be significantly quicker. But I also expect there to be some fairly significant changes in the contract going forward that we're kind of discussing ad hoc at this point. So I would say my recommendation would be let this 3-year contract play out. We start earlier going into the next contract negotiation and have some stuff, I don't want to say pre-buttoned up, but really have good communication between now and then on some of the changes that we're both looking to make, so that when we get to the table, it goes a lot faster.
thank you.
So could just follow up to Max's question, and Gail, you might answer this, is there have been contracts longer than 3 years? Or is 3 years just the contract size that we ready for?
To the chair, there's the contracts that have been shorter. It's typically 3 years, but depending on how long negotiations have gone, some of them have been shorter.
Sure.
To the chair, working at the University of Washington, there were always 3-year contracts. And when I worked at Children's, they would do it.
Any other questions for? So seeing no objections and no more questions, this motion is passed. Thank you guys very much for your hard work. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Our new business, turns from back over to Vice President, let's talk about affiliations with the Virginia Nation. Yeah.
So for those of you who've been on the board for a while and been with us for a while, This is something that we started talking about the very first year that Kenny and I came on the board, I believe, looking toward affiliations for various reasons. And we're closer now than we have been before. We've talked about specifically Virginia Mason, Franciscan Health, BM, and Common Spirit. So what this, what we're asking now is to give the CEO authority to negotiate and sign a master service agreement. The master service agreement does not, at this point, commit us to any other contract. This is a master service agreement, nor any financial commitment. What it does do is allow us to identify those services that we might be able to take advantage of from Virginia Mason's network. And for each of those specific projects, and I'm going to turn it over to Joe to fill in the blanks, we would create a statement of work. It would be a separate subcontract for each item. One of the things that we talked about is group purchasing. That it might be more advantageous in the group purchasing organization that we're participating in. That would be a separate contract, but I'm going to let Joe go into the weeds since he's the one that's been talking to them.
Thank you, Deb. So what Deb's kind of speaking of is the statement of works is every small agreement that we could go through. Some of these would already, we have agreements in place that would have to roll into this, that they developed a statement of work for and signed that would get attached to the master service agreement. An example is Dr. Malpass. We've had him contracted through Virginia Mason for many years, but it's just kind of been a standalone contract that they haven't been tracking real well. So through the master service agreement, attach a statement of work that would be assigned to that contract. So every contract, every service we want to add underneath the Virginia Mason menu of options would just be individual. Some of these would be of a dollar threshold that I'd have to bring up here for approval. Some of them will be more operational and maybe within my authority to approve as well. So some of these, a lot of these are a different scale. As you look at the different contracts, some of them are more specific, like we have they're sending me a list of all the specialists that are currently licensed within the state of Alaska. So we can start talking about how we can leverage some of those specialists through an affiliation or some kind of agreement for them to rent space through our clinics. Other pieces that there's a lot of education that they're able to provide as well. They have a peer-to-peer network that I think we're already leveraging through our physicians, where they can reach out to a peer on Virginia Mason's side to get expert advice or specialist advice, I guess. There's also a lot of leadership education that's available to us, some mentorship programs that might be of interest to us. The list is quite extensive, so we'll get a piece of it. If there's questions, I'll try to answer them as best as I can.
Through the chair.
Yes, yeah, go ahead,
So
Sean.
it's the kind of thing where the more services we utilize under them, the better price we get as the number increases, or
So in talking to Tom Cruzy, what they try to do is they try to pass off the cost of the people providing the services plus the small market to us. So we basically get their cost plus 2%, so my understanding is. And not every agreement would have a cost associated. There are some of these things that could be interesting to us as well. So I just want to add something to Deb's comment at the very beginning. When we first started talking about affiliation, partnership, the board really has made it clear over the years that we want to make sure that we don't lose any of our autonomy as a board, that we still, get to pick and choose what we want and take care of our own finances and all that stuff. So this is more of a partnership to get these different things that we're looking for. When we met with Virginia Mason maybe a year ago, they told us about this program here that it's quite successful with other rural hospitals all over the, down south, that they have this program with to help with that. So this is really a good thing for us and I totally support it and support this motion too. Thanks.
Joe, let's use the instance of the group purchasing organization. So we have a GPO now. And would it be, I guess, a couple of questions, let me just throw them out there. One is, if we roll a GPO into this master service agreement, is it going to be a competitive bid? So would we be seeking other GPOs if we rolled that in? That would be number one. But more importantly is, how do we assess the value to Bartlett? And I guess from a board's perspective, how do we know that, we're getting the best bang for our buck, comparison? So I've got some more, but I just want to start with that kind of that competitive best value question.
That's a good question. Some of this is gonna be like a lot of the services we go out and shop. I mean, we have to be open to every arrangement. So I think what we need to do, the GPO specific, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by just doing an NDA with them. They're gonna bounce off all our volumes of prices so they can even assess whether this makes sense for us to move forward, just to start the process. And then I'll work with CBJ to look at the procurement rules to see if it's within, if this master service agreement would allow us to go direct with them, or if I have to do an RFP to go out. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
There are some of the CBJ procurement rules will have to be comprehensive as we start picking up some services to make sure we're not filing anything as they have said as well.
Okay, because I think it's important that we, the competitive procurement can be a pain, but on the other hand, it also helps that you're framing the scope of services. You're looking at what the value proposition is, you're looking at cost.
Yeah, we're gonna look at each one of these individually to make sure it makes sense and we're getting the best value for Bartlett as we go and enter into any of these agreements. We're not going wholesale.
So the next question I had was, is the offering of services. So I know that Tom Cruise had mentioned when we met with him, potentially dermatology, could be something that we can stand, they could help us stand up here. And how do you make that, I guess, how do you scope that? What are the opportunities? And, so that we know from, that we're filling really what the public need is, dermatology might be good for them because they're offloading, but is it good for Bartlett? Is it good for our community?
Well, there's two different ways to approach these agreements too. We can either purchase the services and we can build them underneath our clinic system. That's one avenue. It's probably the most expensive way, but the other thing we talked with Tom is, do we rent them a space where they bring their specialists in and they're just tenants of ours. And so there's different arrangements we can look at. That'd be like if we bring in dermatology, I'd prefer to bring it in, rent them space, they do the billing, and then they're in their own clinic, they're responsible for that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so each one of these, though, whether it's GPO or dermatology or whatever, there's going to be a stopping point that the board's going to be involved in to make the evaluation of that service. And
Yeah, I'll give you guys
how you're doing it.
on that. So like, as I think of some of the operational stuff, as we look at some of the small stuff that like direct staff versus kind of broader scope stuff. So one of the things we touched base on is kind of, they have an ops center where they do patient monitoring. And so is that something we can access? That's more of an operational nursing day-to-day thing that we talked about. That's what I was talking about when I would, some of the stuff would be underneath my authority.
Okay.
If we're changing scope of services, adding services, I would bring it to the discussion.
So I guess my last question is this agreement with them going to be exclusive to Bartlett, Virginia?
We chatted about that. I wish I had been, I had some stuff written down. I just can't, I believe so, but I can't say yes for sure.
I think that's extreme. I'm not necessarily going to withhold my approval of this. That is very important. I would expect that it would be exclusive to.
In my conversation with Tom Cruise, they wanted to come work with Bartlett. And so I know there were other entities in the community that reached out, but they circled back to us to have this conversation. So they want to work with Bartlett as well.
Lisa.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about the expansion of local specialty services and then increasing the availability of medical procedures. Have you talked to them about anything other than dermatology?
We talked about orthopedics. So as we look at, we're standing up our own orthopedic clinic, and we have a need to cover call when they have availability to help cover some of those services. We talked about oncology quite a bit as well, with Dr. Wyden retiring, someone from Comp Health to try to cover that. They have the ability to help cover those services. We spent most of our time around those specialties.
Dr. Resser.
And I think that the medical staff generally would be supportive of that because we mostly use Virginia Mason. I personally use exclusively Virginia Mason for ENT. And from the referral sources of the three big primary care groups, of which Dr. Malter is one of them, I sense that they also use a lot of Virginia Mason because I ask patients to come there. But we do have agreements, for instance, with Anchorage Radiology, and so the future of radiology is Anchorage, and isn't our EICU, I'm looking at Dr. Malter because he would know this. Our EICU is Anchorage as well, right? Would that potentially change?
Agreement through Providence, which we just renewed. Some of the things we talked about in regards to that would be some telecardiology. Kim might be better situated to talk to this because she's had conversations with Tamara on a one-on-one basis. You want to touch base?
Through the chair, I don't have much to report. There's a couple of moving parts and some people that need to get the schedules together to create the meeting. We had a brief conversation about what services they could provide and what it looked like. And I wanted to bring Dr. Tainer in and some other folks in on that, some providers in on that conversation. It's really important for like our hospitals program. You know, they have some programs that they're working through a grant process right now or using a grant for kind of like reach out services for the primary cares in the town. But there's really nothing for the hospitalists. So the service that they have currently is they can reach out and say, hey, I have this patient. What do you think? Give me a call back, and it could take anywhere from 48 to 72 hours, which is okay for primary care in the community, but really for the hospitalists, that's not ideal. So I wanted to bring them in because they were very interested in looking at, could there be real-time consultant happening, for example, with cardiology? So we're trying to get all of those people together to have that meeting.
And then if I could ask Dr. Malter, who's sitting right here, because he's primary, he's an internist, and so he would have maybe, are there any other concerns, Alex, that you could think of in terms of services or service lines from?
I don't think so. The group may recall that in the last 3 or 4 years, a couple of times the medical staff has been consulted about whether they would support a full-time nephrology or different services. And my take and my recollection from a lot of those discussions over the last 2 or 3 years is that medical staff has generally said that they thought the model that Virginia Mason used with cardiology and with oncology, bringing them up, was the best for this community. That is, we might not need full-time, nephrology here, but that if the hospital facilitated, having a little bit more nephrology access through people coming up, that the medical staff seem to think that that would be the model that would work best. So I think the medical staff will be favorable with this. Coming back to Max's point, Search as a different entity in town, they made a decision 3 or 4 years ago to contract with Swedish. They looked at the university and Virginia Mason and Swedish, and I don't know where that contract is now, but my impression is that they continue to work with Swedish, bringing folks up. So I'm not exactly sure what question you were asking earlier, but at least suffice to say that at this point, my hunch is that the Barlow would be the main group in town that was interested in using Virginia Mason.
Thank you, Dr. Malter and Dr. Raskin.
Can I just respond to that? They had some recent discussions with Search, and that's why I'm bringing that up.
Okay, fair enough.
And I'd like to propose a friendly amendment to this, just for purposes to the motion. And I'd like to put in exclusive after the word execute an exclusive master affiliation agreement with Virginia Mason. And if for some reason it's not that would require you then to come back to the board and to talk to us further about that. So I guess I would propose that as an amendment. I don't know if I'm doing it right, Kenny, but that was
I think you can definitely make a motion, but I'm worried about you put exclusive in there, is that us being exclusive with Virginia Mason, or is Virginia Mason being exclusive with us? So I want to make sure
Okay.
that way the motion is written correctly. How, I mean,
The same thought.
Yeah, I'm open to,
exclusive.
I just threw that out there. I'm certainly open to some changes to that, but. Yeah, or Jeff.
I just want to make sure they're exclusive, they're partnering with Search and Juno, or with us and Juno.
With us.
If they want to partner with Search, they can partner with Search and Sika, and you're not gonna have a problem with that. Thanks.
I know that,
Question, I'm not sure.
yeah, I know Max's concern is really legit, because we all know that we have been meeting with with the other competitors in town and stuff. So I do think that when you do meet with them, you should find out, what their plan is going forward with them. And make sure that we are aligned exactly the way that we want to be aligned with them. Today, I don't really have a problem with adding whatever the language is to this. I'm not sure it needs to be moved today, if we want to push it to make sure that we get this motion correct and make sure that we're completely on the same page. We could move that forward. Joe, what do you think? Do you think it's imperative that we have this done tonight? I do think it's imperative that we keep moving forward with this. And I do really want to make sure that we give you the power to negotiate with us, but do we want to have you, before anything's signed, come back to us and talk with us, Max?
You raise a great point, Kenny, and maybe, just thinking this through I had a kind of a tweak to the motion, but maybe, Joe has heard the discussion here. I think Joe basically is aligned with it. I guess, why don't we proceed with the motion as it's written? And then if he runs into a hiccup, he knows he needs to come back and talk to us some more.
That sounds good for me. How?
I'm totally fine now. I think that's what
Dr. Rasser.
I am supportive of not changing the motion, but I'm exactly on the same page as Max. And so you've heard those concerns.
I think we're allowed to. Anybody else? Okay, so
I would almost say when you asked about Sitka, and I would almost say that would be a discussion, because it could take patients from Juno to Sitka. That would be ours.
When we've had discussions, when we've met with, Kenny and I met with the folks from Virginia Mason, and they were very clear about the fact that they see this as an agreement, as adding value to Bartlett, to our revenue stream, to what we're doing here as a community. So I think they get that, but it's a good point. I mean, but on the other hand, we serve Juno as a hospital, we are a Juno hospital, and so can we restrict them from doing business in Sitka? I don't know.
Yes. Because but it's our agreement. We own the agreement.
Yeah,
If we don't make the agreement, that can be a stipulation.
Point conceded there, Doctor. So the motion's on the floor.
motion's on the floor. Max made the motion. You have a second?
I second.
Shelley seconds it. Do we have any more discussion about this? Okay, so I just want to make sure that we are all very clear on this, that Joe has some really good understanding of where we're at. And if there is any kind of questions, please come back to us. Deb, did you have something you wanted to add? All right, motion's passed. Joe, you got this. Dr. Malcolm, welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to see you. And, you're up with your medical report.
Very good. If you turn to page 33 of the packet, you'll see an issue statement. Even though it came from me, I'm not 100% sure that I wrote it, but if the sense is spelled out. There is a policy that's coming up from the medical staff that Joe, or whoever put this white paper together, points out that you can improve it, you can amend it, or you could send it back for further information. the group probably remembers that 5 or 6 months ago, I mentioned that the medical staff had received legal advice from our attorneys that, you know, quote unquote, any policy that we pass should go up to the board for ratification. It didn't exactly make sense to the medical staff because we called a lot of things policies, which are really almost kind of operational processes and which are not policies with a capital P that, you know, really affect the strategy of the hospital. So we got a little input. We got input from the administration and came up with the policy, which is in the next couple of pages. And essentially what it's, our goal is simply to say that, look, things that are more process oriented or really have to do with kind of some details of the way the medical staff might interact with the nurses would not necessarily come to the board, but bigger issues, we would certainly continue to send up to the board. And the only reason we put this together is since we had received this legal advice that was kind of telling us everything should come up, which didn't exactly make sense to us, we simply wanted to put something together so that you all could kind of give it your nod, understanding that maybe not every single thing that the medical staff passes is going to come to the board. But we certainly use good faith and bring anything that even hints as being something that the board would be interested in looking at. We would certainly bring that all the way out. Does that make sense?
Yep. Anybody have any questions, Dr.
I just
Rush?
have a comment. As a board member and as a medical staff member, I feel comfortable with that distinction. And Dr. Moultrie and before Nick also mentioned this, and so I think this, as a board, we've heard this trend.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. Yep.
I just have a quick question. Do you have a more narrowly, I don't mean to narrow the scope, but a narrow understanding of what that lens is to identify the difference between what's more strategic and policy based that the board could see versus medical staff direct operations?
Well,
See what I'm asking?
I think it's a completely fair question. I mean, to a little extent, the Med Exec Committee, you know, does have a sense of little operational things. We passed an operational med staff policy recently, which had to do with who gets admitted to one unit versus another. And when we pass those things, you know, certainly the board's liaison is the CEO, and the CEO sits in on all of our med exec meetings, all of our general medical staff meetings. So, you know, you can also be assured or reassured that anything we're passing is going to, if the CEO had any concerns that the board needed to hear about, the CEO could also bring it up. So, you know, really the only thing that won't come up is stuff that the medical staff feels is, you know, simply operational, and really that the CEO or the COO comes to our meetings, that they concur is really not something that the board needs to hear. We mostly just did this because we had this letter from our attorneys that said everything should be going up, which didn't make sense to us, didn't make sense to your administrators. And we simply wanted to put something on paper where you guys are signing off that you understand that maybe not every single thing that we address comes to you.
Thank you.
Dr. Raster.
So two, you know, recent examples would be, you know, we've talked about credentialing, right, for cardioversion. And do you need to have what sort of education or certification? We don't need that. Are we going to have mid-levels admit patients, you know, at a commensurate level with physicians? That would come up to the board level. So, you know, these are things that we've talked about. So I support this separation.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. Dr. Moultrie. Do you have anything else to add? Okay, does anybody else have any questions or comments about this? Joe, do you have anything you want to add up on this? I know you've been involved with this too.
No, I agree with them. Like, as they go through the policies, most of these would have come to the board level. Perfect. And so it's to clean up the work.
And Kim, do you have anything you can? That's great. Okay, with that, we have a motion Proposed motion. Sorry. Since I got the suggestion, we should, okay, so, Master,
I move the Board of Directors of Bartlett Regional Hospital approve medical staff policy for approving and ratifying policies, guidelines, and procedures as presented.
I'll second that. Thank you. Any more comments? Seeing no comments or objections, this motion is passed. Thank you, Dr. Walter, for your work on this for almost your whole term of being the chief of staff. Do you have anything else for us, or looks like later on?
I think I've got a little information for the executive session, but nothing else for here. Otherwise, business as usual. Regular.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm gonna go right on to committee meetings. We'll do our committee meetings, and after our committee meetings, we'll take a break. So I'm gonna start with compliance, and then with Al.
Yes, I think the minutes of our committee meeting that are in our packet reflect really what was discussed there. We have a couple of policies that we need to our committee is referring on to the whole board. One of them is an identity theft policy, I believe. And we discussed this in our meeting and made some small changes, and I think this is pretty well thought through. So should I stop there?
Sure.
Do this.
Sure, so this new identity theft program policy is in the packet, and I'm sure everybody got a chance to review it. So this is an action item, so it is coming out of the compliance committee, so that's been first and seconded, and now it's time to ask questions. Is there any questions concerning this? Any comments? Seeing no questions or comments, this action item is passed, and we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, let's see. The hospice and home health compliance policies, we looked at policies we had before, and this one had made some suggestions to greatly simplify what we're doing here, and you have the proposed policy in the packet. So I ask we take action on that.
So, when we started the home health and hospice, we got policies that kind of we bought or borrowed, and really glad it's taken some time to, Gail, I was able to read all your suggestions and stuff and see what this committee did some really good work, Hal, on fixing verbiage and everything. So I appreciate the hard work. So again, this is an action item coming out of our compliance committee with Hal. It's been first and seconded. Now's the time for any questions or comments.
I don't have anything, I was present.
Oh, okay. Okay, seeing no questions or comments, this action item, this policy is approved.
Sure, I just want to comment that I really appreciate incorporating the policy into the hospital's compliance policy by reference. It makes it a whole lot easier to amend. So that anything that we amend doesn't need to be amended on the Wildflower Court. So I appreciate that action was taken.
And yeah, a lot of work. I know a lot of people do that. I really appreciate that too as well. Thank you. Al, nothing from you. I'm going to move on to Deb, our planning committee.
As usual, the minutes accurately reflect the discussion in the planning committee. Just want to draw your attention that a couple of things took some time. Spent a fair amount of in the last few meetings discussing the options for the Aurora Behavioral Health Center, and the research that administration has done on the viability of each of those options. We're still in the discovery phase of the cost of those options. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Nothing's changed since our last meeting. So we spent a fair amount of time on that. It's a work in progress, as well as the organizational design. One of the comments that came out of that, if you had a chance to look at the planning committee package, is that our CEO has a whole lot of folks reporting to him, and it was commented on. But after the discussion, the committee felt confident that this was a viable organizational structure for Bartlett Regional Hospital. So, and then the final thing that we discussed was moving forward with a reset of the facilities master plan, which has not been, we've tweaked it over the years that I've been on the board and that you've all been attending. We've tweaked it with projects that have come and gone, but we've not done a full master plan. You've not completed a full master plan. So you should have all received a copy of the original. It was created in 2011. So we will be moving forward with a reset or a refresh or a renewal, whatever, of the facilities master plan, but looking at it this time in the lens of our strategic plan, so that we're making sure that that we're looking at projects that come before us in that align with our strategic plan. And actually existing projects. We've got a lot of projects that have been on there for a number of years, and just refreshing whether or not whether they're still in alignment with our current strategic plan. Any questions?
Any questions from planning? There was no action items out of planning. Thank you, Deb. It's gonna be a fun job next week. Taking that. We're gonna go to next.
Yes, thank you. Anita, can you roll up to page 11? The packet. There's, I think it's important to just kind of cover the highlights of these notes in our consent agenda. And yeah, go to the bottom, and and if you can make that a little bit bigger across the page, just so the numbers are potentially slightly legible. Scroll down a little bit. I'll center everybody. So there's two kind of blocks of columns, and the right-hand block is the year-to-date column. And these reports are through October of 2024. So we've got 4 fiscal months now under our belt. And the hospital on a consolidated basis is sitting at a $5.1 million positive bottom line through October. If you look across to the far left-hand side of the page, that's the year-to-date results the month-to-date results for October is positive 439,602, which gives us 6 consecutive months of positive net income for the hospital, 6 months of positive net income. And so I think it's fair to say that we can set aside this popularly used notion in the media that we are losing $1 million a month. That is not the case anymore. I think it's important. We still have a lot of headwind ahead of us, but we definitely are performing at a level that we weren't a year ago. This time last year, the second column from the right, second column from the far right is negative 2,917,000. That's where we were sitting last year. So we are fully $8 million ahead on a bottom line basis of where we were last year. There's no fancy schmancy accruals or changes in there. There's no crazy changes in PERS that's impacting this. There's nothing going on with our contractual allowance or bad debt expenses. It's all fairly consistent. And so what that is we've seen, if you can look up the page and spend a little bit more time in there, but our payroll expense has gone up very little, but our total utilization has gone up significantly. I mean, that's what it is. Our inpatient, our average daily census and mental health is up significantly. In fact, our outpatient services are up over last year as well. So that's very good to see. And you never want to rest on anything, but it certainly takes the pressure off our days. A number of days cash on hand has improved. Our receivable days have gone down, and a lot of really hard work by our staff has gone into righting this ship. So I'm looking forward to monitoring this through the dark, cold winter. We'll expect it to come down some for sure. But seems like we turned a corner last May, and we're kind of pointed in a positive direction. So that's all I had.
This is great, Max. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions on this?
I don't have any questions, but I think this is amazing that the staff has done. Our interim CEO, our former CFO, now CEO, and his staff, and every one of the senior leadership and their direct reports have worked really hard to make this happen. Taken some slings and arrows from the community and others, and have weathered it, and I'm really happy and proud of where you guys have taken it.
Good to go. Max, you have anything else? That's great. Thank you very much. So we are done with our committee reports. We're going to take a break right now. We're going to take a break till about 6:30. I will come back with a Norm. Thank you, everybody. We're back, and I'm going to turn this over to our CEO to go over his administration report. Mr. Chair.
So I hope everyone had a chance to read the letter this month. So I reiterated some of the things Max touched base on. We have had several months of success, but we still have to be diligent and keep our eye on the ball with changing things. We don't want to be moving backward at this point. We just got to keep making the positive changes. So we're saying that though, we've spent several hours this week, me and my senior leadership team, going back to our strategic plan. As you know, we're kind of at the refresh point for how we've laid out our plan. We've had it laid out in the calendar. We've gone through, we've looked at all the strategies, kind of what we've completed. We've been able to roll some stuff off the list, update it so it reflects how we are going to move into 2025, which is going to look at more a healing process for staff after all these changes, and more looking at selective growth and investment and opportunity revenue generating programs. So the strategic plan kind of leans on that heavily, and this is something that when we get to a retreat, we'll present the whole thing to the board at that point and talk how the strategy works and some of the plans we have behind the strategy. We've kind of gone through the first quarter of me being CEO, so I've worked on a small what I've accomplished over the first 90 days, and I've shown Deb copies and Denise copies, and I think I'll put that to the board next month, just so kind of a 90-day progress report I'll be presenting to you guys during the month of January. And also in January, I'll be initiating my kind of communication plan with the board, which I laid out during my first letter. So I've invited Shelley to meet with me after finance committee, so I'll do a monthly meeting with her. I'll also do a orientation monthly meeting with the two new board members. And then thereafter, I'll try to meet with 3 board members every month, just so we can have schedule communication, so open discussions in the office. So look for those invites from Anita as we start getting up to find out over the next quarter. Max was kind of touching base with some of you guys, the discussion we had this morning with our city leaders and congressional delegation on the Souls Act. It was not included in the continuing resolution that was not passed today. The representative from Sullivan's office feels confident that they have a good chance of passing it this year. They have 3 different opportunities for the discussion. After we kind of went through the whole process, they brought it up, do we want to move forward with clinical access now, or do we want to kind of hold our ground and see if this gets through during the quarter? I don't know that they're really giving us choice from the conversation. I think the ball's still in their court and they kind of control our destiny on this one. So I think after discussion, discussing this with Kenny and Max, I think the suggestion would be to hold our ground, see if they can get this passed during the March timeframe. And then maybe reassess how we want to move forward with critical access.
And I just want to say, and I believe that's what our commissioners feel like too. Department of Health, the commissioners feel like we need to hold our ground too, and just wait and see if this passes or not.
When you said they, Chair,
Yes.
when you said they, you mean the staff in the senator's office? Says
Well, I'm referring to the commissioner and the deputy commissioner.
that they want you to hold their ground.
The state, yeah.
The state wants us to hold.
I didn't.
Sorry. We also brought the CON during this meeting with Deputy Commissioner Ricci. For the conversation, they're looking at assessing it and making a determination in January. So we are trying to reach out with our lobbyists, trying to get communication with the backside to help move some of that forward. It didn't really sound positive from my perspective, so I don't know which way they're gonna go on this yet. So we'll try to work with the city lobbyists to see if we get some traction, and help push this forward to fruition.
There was certain hostility before, is that a word
It's
you would
lingering, yes.
describe the tone?
Yeah.
Who is hostile?
I think that, if I can get this, I think that the state now, and not the feds, not Sullivan's office, or I think the state and the commissioners are really concerned with Bartlett and making sure that we are financially stable and that we're making the right choices for our community. So I don't want to say it's hostile, but I really want to say that I believe that they really want to make sure that we get this right. And they're probably putting their finger on Bartlett more than they are any other hospitals in the state, because they really find that Bartlett right now is the hospital at that time most in trouble. But as you can see, though, in the last 5 months, we've really improved our finances and really making a headway out of this ditch that we kind of dug for ourselves. So I think that's going to help.
So would you say maybe they're skeptical?
That's a really good word to use. Yes. And I'm hopelessly optimistic.
The other item we discussed last month was the RFP. We discussed that at length. I was able to meet with the city manager and deputy manager today. They kind of indicated that they wanted staff to be the representative, but I also know that the city assembly hasn't had a chance to address this or comment on it, so it's kind of just where it is today. There's no real update. The last piece is there was a public communication on our mobile crisis unit and how we rolled that out, and I'd like to pass it to Kim if permissible to kind of give an update on that.
Thanks, sir. Through the chair, yes, so as Joe, or as many people alluded to in this meeting, Bartlett's had a really tough year. That came with closing some programs that really focus on our behavioral health. One of those was the Aurora Behavioral Health Crisis Service that we offered out of there. And so through the discussions with the board and directive, we knew that CCFR was starting to try to move in that direction, try to follow the model of the mobile crisis team that we saw at Anchorage and Fairbanks, or they saw in Anchorage and Fairbanks. They had a problem with the clinician piece, with trying to get a clinician and trying to get someone to oversee that clinician. So I talked with Dr. DeJoya, who's our behavioral health medical director, and he agreed that if Bartlett kept the clinicians under their umbrella, that he would be the oversight for them. So we started talking a while back, probably summertime, started having some conversations with the city, with CCFR and with JPD, and with our clinicians of what does mobile crisis look like? How can we move this forward? So we got really great partners. CCFR has a consultant that they brought on board to help, who's great. I've been spending some time with her and also others in Anchorage talking about our mobile crisis response team, what that looks like for us. Our model's a little bit different because we share a clinician. They don't have, their clinicians on their teams are just for their teams. They don't go back and forth in the hospital. Ours, we share that clinician. So we got all of the policies together, everything kind of moving, and we did do a soft opening on November 25th. Went really well. Those teams prior to that did third riding with JPD, did third riding with MIH, and just went to look at all the areas and went to the Glory Hall. When they came on board and started doing the kind of the soft opening in November, they did go to the Glory Hall. They did go to those places and just kind of looked. The beauty of this, I would say, partnership, it's with Bartlett clinicians, it's with CCFR, and it's with JPD, all coming together. Our press release went out today officially. I was able to share that with the commissioner and the deputy commissioner on our call earlier. And it's already in the paper, so it's great. We're really excited. It's really, they got their first dispatch call today from dispatch. So that was really exciting. And the team is just really, really excited about providing this service for our community. We recognize we need some sort of crisis services. This allows us allows this team to meet people where they are and support them in their environment. And as you know, sometimes when you move people from that environment, they feel a lack of control. And this allows us to meet people where they are. So that rolled out. I really want to give a good shout out to CCFR and JPD, our PES clinicians who all came together with great ideas to get everything going to get this moving. So the hours are 7 days a week and it's 9 to 6. We're going to start tracking the calls to see what time they're coming in to see if we need to shift those. We all feel, JPD, CCFR, and myself, the team, feel like we need to really be methodical and purposeful rolling out this program. We want it to be a success, and I think it will be. They've already helped kind of a handful of people during the soft opening. They weren't being dispatched out because bringing JPD on had more complexity than it was for us. So we were, that's why we didn't have that initially. But they were, MIH was calling and saying, hey, I think this person could use some support services. Can you come and talk to them? Or EMS would say, I think this might be a behavioral health. Can you come and join? And they had a few calls where PS clinicians met somebody in the field and that person had to come in to Bartlett. They were able to transport with that person and do that warm handoff here at our ER. So that's really nice. So they're out and rolling, and we'll just reassess and keep looking to see what the needs are of our community and redirect from there. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karen. Can you any questions for Karen? Dr. Rasser.
This is spectacular news, and after listening to the heart-wrenching closures. And so the city leaders, I remember meeting with them, and they wanted this badly, and the town wants this badly with some of the high-profile issues that we had this summer. But what's the fiscal concern from the hospital's perspective? Is there something that we really can roll with for a long time?
So I'll start and then I'll defer. So when we were going through looking at all of the core, non-core services, which I know everybody's like, let's get away from those terms. But when we were looking at that, one of the things that we knew we were going to need to keep was our psychiatric emergency services staff. Even though the majority of those are all contracted labor, we knew that was a service we had to still provide for our emergency department. So as we started looking at how could we get a mobile crisis team going, that's why we share the clinicians. So there are days that there's 2 clinicians on. We have a total of 5. That helps cover sick calls and holidays. If nobody takes any time off, then there are some days of the week where there's 2 clinicians on during the day. When that happens, the main clinician, one clinician will work in the ER and the other clinician will just stay with mobile crisis and won't ever have to come in for a call to the ER. If there's only one clinician on, then that clinician will get dispatched from the ER, from the field, to come in and see a patient. So far, that's worked well. They haven't had to wait more than 30 minutes for a clinician to come in. Our case management team, I also want to give them a shout out because they also have agreed to kind of be our backup. If they're on a call in the field and they're the only one clinician on, there are a handful of staff folks in-house that can help do those exams in the ER. And I met with the ER team today and they haven't had any concerns with long wait times to get people evaluated. The expectation, and I can't imagine we'd be any different, is what they saw in Anchorage and in Fairbanks is that their calls or the people coming into the ER dropped tremendously because they were able to get that support in the field. And so we're working, you know, we've involved our community partners and the MVP program. We presented to them as well. And a lot of these folks that are crossing those kind of care streams, right? So some of these folks are MVPs and known to our community. Some of them are with MIH. And so we expect that we'll see the same thing with decreasing the amount of patients that have to come in to actually be admitted because they can be managed at home.
Yeah, and when you look at the cost of them, the 24/7 coverage was already kind of built into the base budget when we started doing the financial analysis prior to making the changes to the system, the services. If we're able to move, or Souls moves forward, or we move into critical access, these are reimbursable costs under the outpatient model. So it's something that will be looked into the ER and potentially reimbursed by Medicare as part of those costs.
So this reminds me very much of what we did in the ER, Dr. Jones did with the repeat offenders, right? And he took a few and then gave them intense social work evaluations and because, you know, 20 people were responsible for 1,000 visits or something. And so this potentially this is absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Next.
Kim, could you talk a little bit about expanding the hours of service
Sure.
from the 9 to 6?
So we kind of modeled our program, this program after Anchorage. They started a 9 to 6 because they weren't sure of the needs. They weren't sure of what the staffing needs were going to look like. So Joe Mishler and I have spent a lot of time talking about, he's asked the dispatchers to kind of track calls that come in after 6 to see if we need to shift. But we want to be very cautious of, again, being mindful and purposeful in those shifting of those hours, making sure we do have staff available and what that looks like. So we're going to reevaluate in January to see, probably I'm out 2 weeks in January. So when I get back, we're going to reevaluate and see what that call volume is after 6 o'clock and see if we're able to accommodate that. We do have 24-hour clinicians. It would be making sure that we had, that we come together to an agreement to see, do we do a 10 to 8 or do we do a midnight to midnight? Or, you know, the eventual goal is to get this program running pretty smoothly and get all the kinks out. We know there'll be some speed bumps, you know, bumps and lumps along the way. But the eventual goal is to get this running so smoothly that these clinicians can go to the Glory Hall and around, that they can be out on the streets and kind of meeting people there and just being a presence in our community. One that is welcomed, right? You know, they're not forcing people to come in to get care. They're really making sure that folks, you know, can get help that they need on scene or at their house. So once we start looking at this program more and more as it moves forward and looking at the call volume and the times, then we'll have to figure out if we are able to shift those hours. Like I said, on the Bartlett side, we have the clinicians that are 24 hours. We'd be trying to arrange that piece on the CCFR side.
I've got one more question on when they dispatch. So JPD is going out with the cruisers, CCFR is going out with an ambulance, is that right? And how do we get to the scene?
We, and I think it was through a grant, and Joe, I apologize, I don't have the information, but the city has a Ford Explorer. So CCFR has a Ford Explorer that is the mobile crisis one, is what it's called. And so if it's a police call, JPD goes. If it's EMS goes. And if it's a behavioral health call that fits the criteria for our team, then mobile crisis. And we've had really good positive feedback from JPD and EMS, but really JPD doesn't have the bandwidth either to go to these calls. So the beauty of this is it gets everybody to the right calls where they're supposed to be at the right time.
I can't agree more with Dr. Astor about how happy I am this program is underway. And I believe today when I was on the call, when you talked to the commissioner and deputy commissioner, they were very excited about this too. This is a need, a hole in our community. It's needed to be filled for a long time. And I think this is a great way, and just to be able to enhance going forward is going to be super. So thank you very much. I look forward to hearing more about this in the coming years and months and years. Joe.
The last one, I just had that, we've been doing consistent rounding throughout the hospital. Me and Chuck were able to get out today, round through every single department. We made it over to Wildflower Court and actually made a lot through with Deb today with all those staffing, so we appreciate her. I think it's been really well received, like people are more apt to come up and just chat with us at this point, so it's going well. That's great. And that's good in my report.
Thank you. Dr. Astor.
Any updates on the ophthalmology situation? Our, town seems to really like that service.
Yeah, he did have a clinic service this week. We did have quite a few more patients. He goes at a kind of a different pace. We've had to extend some of the visits. We might be able to extend his time frame here. We have got him contracted, I believe, through April at this point. He's given us 2 to 3 more months as I think he kind of assesses his plans and his plans.
How do patients contact him and if they,
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. I can pull that.
no, I mean, so there is a,
How do patients?
There's a link on the website.
There's a link on our website and it's to the Bartlett Ophthalmology Clinic.
Great service. And then the rounding thing is great too, and Chad. Good job. I'm glad to have you see that it's in your human resources report too. So happy to see that. Happy to see that we're exceeding our goals and with our rounding. So that's great. Thank you very much. Joe, do you have anything else? No, that's great. So is Heather on here?
Through the chair, Heather is not here, so I will try to give the report. Her husband is getting an answer at the Coast Guard tonight, so she's at his there.
Oh, awesome. Good.
So home health and hospice is doing very good. I'll start with the home health side. They, this is an updated report she gave me today. They actually have 28 patients. They do have a lot of referrals coming in, so she's looking at that, looking how to manage that patient load. And then as of, well, tomorrow they have 7 new hospice patients coming on. She'll be looking at those, and their average length of stay is about 28 days. They did have, of course, with that program, it was up to, I think, 50s, 60s, and then they had some deaths. And so they'll have those new folks coming on tomorrow. And I also want to mention the Light Up a Life event that happened on the 13th here in our lobby. It was really great to be part of that. It was a very, I don't want to say sad event, but it was, of course, it was sad in remembrance of those that were lost to cancer, but it was really great to be part of that. Dr. Urata and Mandy Malott spoke at that. And then they also had a silent auction. It was really a neat thing to be part of.
Thank you, Kim.
And I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Everybody, Dr. Astor.
I just have a question for the CEO. And so we got a grant from, we can now bill, right? We can bill for these services. We're licensed, and we got a grant from the community foundation, right?
Yes.
But it was an expensive program. How are we doing from a fiscal perspective for the next few months projected down the line?
That's something that actually Max and Chuck have talked about. We're gonna try to pull a report and do a year-to-date update and a 5-year projection on where we think we can be. And that was part of the decision point documents that the board had put together at our July meeting or June meeting. We made the program decisions. So that would be something that we going forward.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I know that, I believe hospice made money during the month of October and home health lost some.
It's in our packet. I wish I thought about. So I'm almost there. Anita, we're headed towards like page 19 or 20, I think. But further, so we're going to 22, page 22. So what you have here is 2 blocks of columns. Again, you have month-to-date information on the left and year-to-date information on the right. Hospice and home care are the 2 middle columns in both sets of blocks. If you scroll to the bottom there, Anita. So during the month, home care lost $22,000. Hospice made $31,000, so combined they made $9,000 in that, which is the first positive month that's that. So you can see on the right, we're still at a loss there of $147,000 year to date, but it, you know, that our head poked above the water in October, so that's good to see. And Joe or Chuck, if you guys could just talk a little bit about the way we're recognizing revenue right now, because it's basically cash basis.
Yeah, Chuck, do you want to touch base?
Yeah, the way that the revenue reports are pulled out of the billing collection company, they discount down at the time of billing. So if they bill a gross amount of $100 and they're going to get paid 80, they send over to us $80. So one of the things that I'm trying to do for our next finance committee meeting is to take that $100 and gross it up so that we can see what we're billing versus what we're collecting. And, but right now, thus far in this year, we've reported net revenue, not gross revenue.
Yeah, so when you go, Anita, would you scroll to the top of that page to Chuck's point? When you look at the middle set of blocks, yeah, and I know it's hard to read. Row 17 is net patient service revenue. And so during the month, we recognized 41,000 in hospital, or I'm sorry, home care, 93,000 in hospice. And if you look across to the totals, we only have 165 for home health year to date and only 186. So literally 50% of our hospice revenue was recognized in the month of October. And what that is that's just getting on the billing flow, right? So you'll see that continue to improve here in the coming months. But it's great to see.
Great question.
And I don't believe we've received any JCF money yet this fiscal year, right? So all of that money is billed with revenue. There's no JCF funding in there yet.
Do you know when that will come in, Grant?
Well, I've been interacting with Bob Bartholomew, and he's been traveling some. Bob is on the JCF board, and he's been kind of tasked with interacting with us on this, and they're continuing to kind of do their due diligence on their side. So I don't want to commit for them, but I know that they're very actively kind of monitoring how we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you. Next. Thank you, Dr. Rasser. Great question. Anything else? Thank you for that. And we'll go to Deb Galston, Wildflower Court.
I don't really have anything to present, other than those numbers that I presented earlier. So, but if there's any questions that I can answer or some information that I can start collecting for the next board meeting that you'd be interested in knowing. Again, it's week 3 for me, so there's so much I could talk about, but.
I have Dr. Nestor.
I have a question. You said we were at 83% occupancy. Could we get to 100? And what might be holding us back?
100% we can. When I worked there in years past, we definitely were. I mean, give or take a couple of beds, right, that we would, rotate. But, there are some staffing challenges right now, and that is where we're at. It is a big challenge right now. There's been some unexpected things happening, and it's just, we're working through those. I'll tell you right now, I had a meeting with Jenny and her and Emily, related to the Grow Your Own program, and this last week, and I am so confident and excited about that program and our connection with Wildflower Court, and refining it, and just really working on it to retain the CNAs that we are putting through the program. So work is being done there, so I'm hopeful. Excited for what the future is going to hold for that, retaining that staff, that's stable staff, so that we can bring in more residents and fill up the building. That's what we want to do. That's our goal. So
to that point though, Jeff, so if we're at 53, you said 52, 53?
Or 51 right now today.
What would the current staffing level allow you to, what's the empty beds based on your staffing level? Are there any, or are you kind of maxed out with your staff?
Could not take any more today.
Okay.
So I guess my question was, is there just certain days that we can admit people in the Wildflower Court? Did we open that up to make all days we can admit? But I guess with staff not being there, not being able to admit anybody, I just was curious about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So generally speaking, we have, we call kind of admission coordinators, got our physical therapists, and a lot of those jobs are really, kind of a Monday through Friday piece. And there are some requirements and timeframes on when certain assessments need to be done after a patient is admitted, or excuse me, a resident is admitted. So they haven't really, and then there's the pharmacy piece, a lot of times our pharmacy in the past has been closed on Saturdays and Sundays. So, the weekend or Friday afternoon admissions just really weren't in the best interest of the resident or the staff, because the services weren't really there over the weekend, and we couldn't do things in a timely manner. So that's why in the past, most admissions have been done earlier in the week. I think we're gonna look at that. I think we're gonna look at opening that up, right? Because the goal is to, if we have a community member that's ready to leave the hospital and come over to Wildflower Court, we want to make that as efficient as possible and not to have any delays. So I think we're going to be looking at everything at this point to how we can open up the timing of admission.
Perfect.
If I just may say, so it's so great to have Deb because she's worked there before. And so coming in with this way of like how she knows it can be, and with that vision that she has. So we've spent a lot of time talking about the goals and what do we think. And one of those things is to say, how could we get to, taking patients eventually every day of the week, and what does that look like? And of course, it takes a lot of different ancillary services to be able to make that happen. But she's got a great vision. She's looked at staffing grids, looking at creative ways to have staffing and maybe shift staffing to accommodate some things that would help bringing more patients in. So she's done a great, I know she says she's only been there 3 weeks, but she's done a great job in those 3 weeks, really bringing some stuff up that she thinks that she can change and has the ambition to do it. So I'm excited to see where she takes Wildflower Court.
We're excited to have you too. You guys really are. Any other questions for Deb? Right. So next is our liaison report. He's not here, so we'll just move on to that, and we'll move on to President's report. So first I want to say this is our last meeting of the year, and this is also Dr. Malter's last meeting as a chief of staff. And so Dr. Malter, I don't read letters very well, but I'm going to do this, attempt to do this. So first of all, dear Dr. Malter, on behalf of the board of directors, it's my honor to recognize the significance and the important contributions of Dr. Alex Malter during this year of leadership. Dr. Malter has provided 28 years of service to our community hospital. Throughout that time, Dr. Malter served 8 years on our board of directors and in multiple committees, including the Med Staff Executive. He has volunteered many hours of his time and offered constructive input into shaping Bartlett's future. In recognition of this service to the city and borough of Juneau, through Bartlett Regional Hospital Board, a donation we made in the honor of Dr. Malter to the Bartlett Foundation, and an inscribed leaf bearing the name will be placed on the foundation giving tree. The board would also like to thank him for all of his contributions and dedications, especially throughout this year as chief of staff. And with deepest appreciation to the board of directors and our board of directors. Thank you.
It's certainly been a pleasure working with the entire board leadership. Having sat on the board for a number of years and having been on MedExec previously, this was by far the best year of board meetings I've ever come to. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Malter. And this is for,
oh, very nice.
Part of my president's report, as you guys know, this is the last meeting of the year, so we're going to go right into elections of new officers. So before we do that, I just want to thank everybody for the last 4 years of me being your board president. It's been an honor and a privilege for me to serve this board. Appreciate everybody's help and counsel and constructive criticism and praise and everything else. This, it really is a labor of love of what we all do as board members to bring this community hospital together. So I just really want to appreciate you guys all, let you know how much I thank you all for being there for Bartlett and for myself as the presidency. This really has been an honor of my life to be able to do this and service this as this hospital. So thank you all very much. With that, this month, I haven't been here much, as you guys seen. I told my wife twice no, so this way I'm not. And so, has really stepped in as a vice president and really watched a lot of our meetings, but I was able to follow along with reading all the board minutes and reports, and thank you all very much. Everybody on the committees worked really hard this month to make sure that we kept going straight. So with that, does anybody have any questions for me? No? All right, so we are going to go right on to our election of our new officers. So as you know that each person or each office gets to have a nomination and he makes suggested motions and stuff like that. So I don't know if this is the right way to do this, but I'm going to do this. And as president, I'm going to move that the Bartlett Regional Hospital Board of Directors nominate, or I'm going to nominate Deb Johnson as our president. Deb has served the last 2 years as vice president. This last year, Deb has gone to almost every meeting that I have gone to. She's met with multiple city leaders with me. She's gone to finance committee meetings with the city and spent lots of time with our CEO. She chaired our CEO search committee. She's been a great person on our board for the last 6 years. She just was reappointed now for the next 3 years. She's served as our chair of planning for the last 2 years. And before that, she was our chair of finance. So with that, my nomination is for Deb.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any more nominations on the floor? Okay,
Oh, for president?
for president, yes,
Okay.
for president, okay. So,
Raise your hand.
pretty important not to keep your hand down. So I'm gonna make this motion. I move that the Bartlett Regional Hospital Board of Directors elect Deb Johnson as president to serve from December 19th, 2024 to December 23rd, Board of Directors meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye. See, no one opposed. Congratulations, Deb, you are our new president. Yes.
I said, thank you.
Oh, thank you. You want me to continue the meeting?
Let's get through I'll let you get through the elections.
Okay, great. So now we'll take open nominations for vice president. Yep.
I nominate Dr. Raster as our vice president for next year.
Second.
Dr. Raster has been on the board for several years now, 2 years now. It seems like a while. We really appreciate you stepping in the wake of Lindy's departure to chair the quality committee. And I think that Dr. Raster will be a wonderful vice president for next year.
So Dr. Raster, is any other nominations for vice president? Seeing no other nominations and no objections, Dr. Raster, congratulations, you are now the vice president. I'm just gonna say this motion, so just make sure it's on the record. I move that Bartlett Regional Hospital Board of Directors elect Dr. John Raster as vice president to serve from December 19, 2024 to December 25th to December 2025 Board of Directors meetings. I ask for unanimous consent. Seeing no objections, that is passed. And now we have open for our secretary, nominations for our secretary.
I won't raise my hand.
Shelley.
I would like to nominate Hal for the secretary position. I think his attention to detail will be a great asset for doing credentialing. So.
I also want to speak on Hal too, just because I can still. Hal's been on this board too for 6 years, it's 5 years, 4 years? Wow. Well, it seems like it's been
I know, I
a
had
long
to talk to
time.
Dr. Huston.
Wow. And Hal is just incredible attention to detail in everything that he does. He takes everything that he does fully and works very hard at it. So I'm very excited to see you joining the leadership team, Hal.
Well, thank you.
So, is there any other nominations?
Oh, no, I was getting ready to second.
Oh, you can make a motion if you, or actually, do you want to make a motion, Shelley?
I move the Bartlett Regional Hospital Board of Directors elect Hal Geiger as secretary to serve from December 19, 2024 to the December 2025 Board of Directors.
And Lisa is seconded.
I'm sorry. Jump the gun.
And seeing no objections, Hal, congratulations. With that, I will turn this meeting over to our president.
Okay, well, there's not much left on the agenda, so it will be an easy, my first day of my new term. I was appointed, or second day of my new term, I guess. No, I don't know. It doesn't matter. This week I was appointed Tuesday. What's left is the board calendar. Can we take a look? And then we'll go into executive session. All right, it looks like we've scheduled, we don't have committee assignments just yet. We will, but we tentatively scheduled, and we're hoping to keep it on the first Friday of every month. The planning committee for noon on Friday the 3rd. The committee members have all said that they are okay unless something has changed with the committee members. So I think we're good with the 3rd. Credentials committee is a standing meeting, so and Max, we're all still good with finance.
Yep.
And Lisa, governance is good. All right.
Will these be the new members or that's still the existing members on the starting January will be the new members?
Starting in January, it will be the new members.
Yeah.
So there undoubtedly will be some changes to the membership of the committees.
When will that be decided?
I will start reaching out to folks for committee assignments right away. So as soon as we get the slates, the slates ready, I'll pass it on. He's going to be out of town, correct? Until I'll be back on the 6th. Yeah. So I'm going to try and have it done before the 3rd. Can't guarantee anything, but you'll all hear from me. 2. Assuming that you're in town. So it may be, depending on, it may be that the same committee members will attend the first. Hoping not. If I can reach out to everybody.
Madam Chair. Can we discuss? You put quality and compliance together, who should I work with?
Oh, that's a darn good idea.
Sorry.
Madam Chair. Let's give Madam Chair next couple of days. I'm sure she's gonna reach out to everybody. I know that she has a really good plan in progress. And I believe that she'll be able to get this done tomorrow or Monday. And even though Anita might not be here, I'm sure Suzette or someone from the office can get the slate out to everybody. And I have full confidence that we'll have the new planning committee and you'll have all of the chairs in place by by Monday or Tuesday of next week.
And she can reach out to me and I can schedule it and.
We're talking quality compliance.
Yes, because we have to do your annual plans.
Yep.
Approval and then I'd like to get them to the full board.
For the January. Okay, you'll hear as soon as I'm able to shuffle all the cards and fill the slots and get everybody to agree. All right, thank you. Do we need another break going into executive session? Okay, do I have a motion to go into the executive session?
I'm sure, let's.
Oh, I'm sorry, board comments and questions.
Madam Chair, if I may, just a quick comment. Dr. Wyden had his retirement party today. And most people know that Paul put together the oncology program here for the last 20 years. And really built up a program that I think the entire community is so appreciative of. So thanks to the administration for supporting it. Thanks to the board for having the insight to help administration recruit him in. And the community, it's really an example of where the community benefits by having specialists here. And maybe is a model as you think about working more closely with Virginia Mason, for example, of how you can bring up other services that would be really beneficial for the community.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Any other comments? Okay, now I would entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Madam Chair, I move that we. Oh, let's see, we're supposed to have the exact right. I move the Board of Directors of Bartlett Regional Hospital recess into executive session to discuss several matters, including those which by law, municipal charter, or ordinance are required to be confidential or involve consideration of records that are not subject to public disclosure, specifically the credentialing report, medical staff meeting, and patient safety dashboard. And Madam Chair, I ask that you be allowed to select which staff may remain.
You have a second.
I second that.
Okay, we are, if you would stop the recording and we'll wait till everyone is ready.
And then how would you?
Yeah. I move that we.
Are you ready?
We're ready. I move that we accept the credentialing report.
Any objections? Hearing none, the board has accepted the credentialing report and in relatively record time. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Yeah, I want to just comment that this is like the earliest meeting we've concluded. Good job, new chair.